So I've been playing this little game. Come on, when I say little. But I've been playing this big old game called Minecraft. Now recently, I've been playing this game. I've been playing this game all my life, honestly. Since I was just a little kid to still these days, commonly on Sunday afternoons. And I used to think about it a lot when I was younger. That is, why did I love this game? And why do I still love this game? I just love it so much. Is it the building, the fighting, the endless things I can do? The different ways to experience the game. From making a base for all my stuff, to going exploring in different caves and looking for treasure like gold and diamonds, as well as being able to go online and experience endless bouts of fun with new and exciting ways this amazing community has managed to produce. And while I was spending a bit of time on single player the other day, a bit bored honestly, I spent a whole lot of thought into it again. What do I love about Minecraft that I can't find in any other game? And that's when I realized it. What I think I love most is the community. Ha! No, not that community. The more public side. The custom game servers, the ones with dissentive communities, where you can chat with other people from all around the world. I'll look up these servers on public Minecraft forums, snoop around till I spot one with a Discord server. I'll join it, I'll check its amount of activity, and stay if it looks promising. Then, I'll wait till school gets out at 4:30 and watch the server for anyone who joins voice chat. Then, I'll join them. And I'll play with them for a while. Until I do something. I grief them. It'll start with some confusion first, a classic tactic. Push them off the cliff and then say it was all an accident. Whoops, my mouse clicked. I didn't mean to push you all the way into that mound of lava with all your stuff melting away. It was just a mistake. A happy accident, as it were. And I, in my best pretty voice, will clamor about how I really didn't do nothing wrong. And they'll believe me, like the little numbnuts they are. And then, accident after accident. Mistake after mistake. Maybe some fire will catch onto their chests. Maybe someone might have moved their bed into the center of a lake. Maybe someone found a creeper and trapped it under their house while they weren't home. Little happy accidents, one could say. And then finally, I'll stop for a bit. When the coast gets too clear, just before the crime draws a line, I'll make up for it. Slowly, bit by bit, get them wood, coal, iron even. I'll win back their trust, piece by piece, and we'll play this little game of ours, until eventually, they'll reach an inevitable point where, if not I, then they find diamonds. And that's when I'll truly begin my subset of despair. I'll find where they are, and in a happy tune, I'll wish them luck with a coursing chime of voice. Before I drop a bucket of lava at their toes, while they're mining in a cave with no way out, and all their work, all their progress, all those hours spent will be for nothing. Who knows? They might die right in front of me, and I might get their diamonds. But it doesn't matter. Everything must burn. That's the only way to make my point. That by the time I'm done with them, they'll have nothing left. But it isn't this that brings me pleasure. It's their reactions, their voices, their screams.
No. Oh, okay. Okay. No.
I love Minecraft because of the spurgs, because of the community, the people who play, who invest their time and energy into so much work, only to watch it burn away. And having spent so much investment into these projects, only to watch it burn away, guarantees the greatest of results. I like to bully the little spurgs, the screamers, the reactors, child or man. Their reactions bring me no greater pleasure. Their scorn is the fuel to the fire for which I still live for. I hate my life, let me tell you that. I hate getting older. I hate seeing the days pass. I hate having birthdays and struggling to count how old I am and how much happier I was the last. I wish I could be a little boy forever, but I cannot. I wish I could wake up and see my dad again, but I cannot. There are days where I don't want to wake up, where I stay in bed because I have too many regrets, feelings of failure and distress. Because all I did yesterday and the day before that was laugh and laugh and laugh on Discord. And now I have an exam today. And did I study? No! So I know for pretty sure that I'm gonna fail. So what do I have to live for? What have I always lived for? Today, since the days of my youth. The screams, the cries, the torture, the anguish of others. People who, even though I'm bad off, even though I've made too many mistakes in my life to ever be happy, I know for damn well sure that I'm better and I'll be way more accomplished than any of them will ever be. I like to see the little Spurg's reactions, hear their whines and whimpers, and laugh through text or over the mic as they shout and they cry about all the shit they've lost through my wacky antics. I especially love it when they scream. It is music to my ears, it really is. I like to watch the little Spurgs pout, hear their tantrums through their mics, and if I'm lucky, hear their parents come in, yell at them, maybe even hit them, call them putrid little pesticides, stains on their lives, their careers, their potential to be great contributors to society. Ruined, all because they couldn't find a condom that night, and decided to risk it all. When I hear the anguish, the rage seeping in people's voices, those who've lost their diamonds, and those who've lost it all, it brings me such pleasure, such joy, a feeling I have never had, not since then, not since anywhere else, than playing Minecraft. I also like to build brown bricks in Minecraft. Brown bricks, Minecraft, Presley 1.